me for my voice, but I have never seen anything like it.
Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Hey, welcome back to the podcast. NFL Wednesday on this quarantined week. If you are not social distancing, if you're not, taking a little bit of time to wash your hands and try not going out in public. I know a lot of us still have to go to work. A lot of us still have to pay bills. That's a conversation for another day. But hopefully you guys are staying safe out there. And I hope that you can listen to this podcast and get entertained, have a little bit of entertainment while you sit around your house and clean or potentially do nothing. Big moves in the NFL. We had guys that are cornerstone franchise players moving to different teams. We had some lesser-known players signing with some teams that I think are going to have a big impact. But we only have a handful of minutes on this podcast, so I want to hit all the high notes. And we're going to start with what happened on Tuesday. I should say Monday. Monday, we had a historic trade because it now will go down in the history of the Houston sports books. When the books are written, when the history of mankind is done, Bill O'Brien's name will be in the history books, and for all the wrong reasons. You not only blew a 24-point lead to the Kansas City Chiefs, the eventual Super Bowl champions, you not only were a pretty bad GM and head coach for the past 2 seasons, at least you can extend this to as far as you want, but at least the last 2 seasons he's been abysmal. But you get rid of the best player in the I should say the best receiver in the league, period. But I'd say a top 2 wide receiver in Texans history. I think Andre Johnson and DeAndre Hopkins are the 2, hands down, best receivers ever to lace them up in Houston. I don't think that you can go to the Oilers and find somebody better. I think that these 2 guys are unique individuals, unique specimens of athlete. There's not anybody who's come close to what they've been able to do while wearing a Texans uniform. So instead of trying to keep Hopkins around for his entire career, instead of trying to go trade for an offensive line to give Deshaun a little bit more time to get him the ball, instead of doing what smart GMs would do and try to keep your incredible talented players in-house, Bill O'Brien decided to trade DeAndre Hopkins. Now, if you said to me, well, he decided to trade him for a left tackle and 4 future first-round picks, I'd say, okay, well, that makes sense. Hopefully that this tackle will be able to protect protect Watson a little bit more. Hopkins is an incredible wide receiver, but this wide receiver draft is pretty stacked. Maybe you can go get a CeeDee Lamb. Maybe you go get somebody to replace him. Now, it's going to be hard to replace the best wide receiver in football. Again, you want to put Julio in that conversation, you can. But I think that it's top 2 wide receiver in the NFL. If you want to go get a cheap young wide receiver to replace him and replace that productivity, it's going to be rough, but I think it can be done. That's how good this receiver class is. But no, not only do they get the most replaceable position in the NFL, a running back in return, but they get a running back who is often injured in David Johnson. David Johnson coming over from the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals also were able to swindle a 4th-round pick out of the Texans, making this a trade that the Cardinals not only got a pick out of, which is something absurd, who is asking for a pick to go along with an incredible wide receiver, but they got the best receiver. And in the NBA, and in most trades, what you can do is you can decide the winner by who got the better deal. If I'm trading you celery for 2 Jell-O cups objectively are better than the stalk of celery. I won the trade. If I'm trading you DeAndre Hopkins, an all-pro wide receiver, and sending you back a beat-up running back who might not be in the league in 3 years, I won the trade. The Arizona Cardinals were able to pull off a heist in broad daylight, and nobody called the police. It's incredible. Hopkins is going to be a very special player in Arizona. You can book it now. Larry Fitzgerald is on his way out. Hopkins is in the prime of his career. And you get a young quarterback in Kyler Murray and a young coach in Cliff Kingsbury being able to game plan with Hopkins. If Kyler was a little bit better, I would say that this is the equivalent of sending Randy Moss to the Patriots. Now, Brady, who we're going to get to in a second, clearly head and shoulders better than Kyler Murray, and I meant that as a height joke as well. But you get a guy in Hopkins who plays all 16, potentially 17 games this next season. You get a guy in the prime of his career who's going to be able to beat corners. And you look at the NFC West, and you got the Rams, good secondary. Seahawks, excellent secondary. 49ers, incredible defense. He's going to be able to beat all those guys off the ball. So you get a guy in Hopkins who's going to change the NFC West. And do I think that the Cardinals are the favorite? No. Do I think that they are in the right direction? Hands down, yes. Bill O'Brien's not going to have a job in a few years, and nobody's going to be asking why. He is the security guard who fell asleep at his post and let the bank get robbed. Because the Texans right now have one valuable asset left. That one valuable asset's Deshaun Watson. And in a few years, they're going to franchise tag him. In a few more years, he's going to be wanting to leave Houston because he's not going to have the weapons to throw to. He's not going to have the protection. He's going to go the same way that Andrew Luck did in Indianapolis. If you don't give a good young quarterback protection, he's going to either get hurt or he's going to try to leave. And that is the future for the Houston Texans. All right, moving on to another player who signs with a team in the NFC North. It's Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham has not been good, and we're going to make this one quick. Jimmy Graham has not been good since he left the Big Easy. Since he left Sean Payton's system, since he left Drew Brees, he has been a very questionable tight end, to say the least. I have said this about pass-catching players, either running backs that come out of the backfield and catch passes, wide receivers or slot receivers who are able to make some moves, make some things happen, and tight ends. In a position that you have to not only catch the ball but make a play with it, you usually are helped when you have an excellent quarterback. And Jimmy Graham has had 3 incredible quarterbacks throughout his career. He starts with Drew Brees, who, even though I don't exactly love the hype that Drew Brees gets, I will never not consider him a elite quarterback. Then he goes to Seattle, where he has another elite quarterback in Russell Wilson, who I said before as a top 3, easily top 2 quarterback any given year. He goes from that to Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, who, another guy who's elite. And there's no way that you can spell that wrong. A-Rod is incredible. And he gets cut from the Packers because he's not able to catch passes. He's not able to get open. He's not able to run block. What the Bears did is they did what a young teenager does when he's playing Madden. He goes to the free agency pool at the end of the season. He simulates the season. He goes to the free agency pool. And while the player might not be rated as high, or the player might not be as fitting into the system that he's playing the team with, he's got the most name recognition. Jimmy Graham was the most recognizable name in the free agency market. He thought to have at least a few more seasons under his belt that he can play. So the Bears make a move to get him. But the problem with the Bears is that they now have a tight end who can't run block and has had trouble in the past making any sort of plays, catching the ball. And they have a quarterback who has trouble throwing the ball. So now both ends of the connection are broken. Jimmy Graham can't catch. Mitchell Trubisky can't throw. And you're looking at an offense that's going to rely heavily on the run next year. The offensive line loses Kyle Long. What is he going to do? How are the Bears going to fill that role? I don't think they are. The Bears are in a very weird predicament because they could trade for Andy Dalton, that we've mentioned before on this podcast, that they could make a move for Andy Dalton. They could make a move for some of these other young quarterbacks. They could draft a quarterback. But they need to do something because they're in hot water right now. Moving on to the story of the day, and we should have got this one first, but I wanted to tease it a little bit. Tom Brady. Tom Brady, the 42-year-old quarterback, 6-time Super Bowl champion, hands down the greatest quarterback ever to suit up in the professional football league. In the National Football League, he has done it better than anybody else who's played the position. He now moves on from the team that he's played 20 years with and goes down south to Florida. He's playing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we've joked about this for a while now. It's a joke that me and my buddies would have at the bar. It's a joke I would have with some of my Patriots friends. I always said Tom Brady going to Florida is what every retiree does. When you get old and your parents can't live in their home anymore, where do they go? A retirement community in Tampa Bay, Florida. And that is exactly what Tom Brady's doing. He goes with Bruce Arians. He now has 2 really good targets in Mike Evans and Godwin. Something he never had in New England. He hasn't had weapons like he's going to have in Tampa Bay in a long time. But the problem is that you're going to be playing in a division with the Saints, with the Panthers, with the Falcons. But bigger than that is now you're going to have to learn a completely new playbook. You're going to have to move. You're potentially not going to have to move your entire family, but you're going to be away from your family. You still live on the East Coast. Makes it the trip a little bit easier going from Massachusetts down to Florida. But still, this is the most weird position I've ever seen a quarterback end up in. When Peyton Manning left Indianapolis and went to Denver, everybody said that move makes sense. John Elway's the GM. John Elway and Peyton had a relationship in the past. Peyton knew that the defense was incredible. He knew that the offensive weapons were there. And he knew that he was the last piece to win a title. When Kirk Cousins went to Minnesota, not only was it the money, but he had a good running back in Cook. He had 2 excellent wide receivers in Diggs and Thielen, and he had a tight end in Kyle Rudolph. He knew that he had weapons. He knew that he could make some plays. When Joe Montana was forced out of the Bay because Steve Young was the up-and-coming guy, he goes to Kansas City. Kansas City had weapons. When Favre left Green Bay, he goes to New York and then ends up in Minnesota, another place that had weapons. So I get Brady going to Tampa Bay because of the weapons. What I don't get is why you would go anywhere at all. Why would you leave the comfort of your home? It doesn't make sense. The same way that I see people going to bar and pubs and beaches and movie theaters now during this entire corona epidemic, why are you going anywhere when the sanctity of your home, the safety of your home, the thing that you know you're not going to get sick in, you're not going to get hurt in? Tom Brady's going to play behind an offensive line that he doesn't have any connection with. He goes to play for a coach with Bruce Arians, who he might know relatively well. Arians is a guy who's been around the league for a while, but he's never had him coach him before, not in the way that he's going to have him coach him this year. It doesn't make a ton of sense. And for the New England Patriots to force Tom Brady out, for Belichick not even to really give any inclination that he's tried to keep Brady, not only does it feel like the Patriot way, not only does it feel like Bill Belichick, this is the ultimate, nobody's bigger than the brand, not only does this feel like the most NFL move ever, where players are dispensable, that the guy behind the face mask doesn't really matter because it's always the next man up mentality in Green Bay. In New England. This is the epitome of Bill Belichickian system, and it's going to show if it works this offseason. Because if they don't get a quarterback to fill in what the replacement for Brady, whoever it's going to be, is going to have big shoes to fill. Nobody is ever going to step in the position of quarterback in New England and be able to do what Brady did. 6 rings in 20 years, 9 championship appearances. Nobody's ever going to come close to touching those marks. The incredible amount of touchdown throws he made. The incredible amount of playoff success that he had. Nobody's going to be able to do that. And I regretfully inform you that that is the bar that has been set for the next quarterback for the Patriots. Because you can't go back. A lot of fans are too young to remember Bledsoe. A lot of fans are even younger to remember some of those other crappy quarterbacks New England had. So the bar is going to be Brady, at least the last 3 years of Brady. So who do you go get? That's a question that we're going to have on our mind until the NFL season starts or until the Patriots decide to make a gamble on somebody. I could see them trying to trade up and getting a guy like Jake Fromm. I could see them tanking this year and trying to get a guy like Trevor Lawrence, a dude that you know is going to be a successful quarterback for the next 15 years. Go get your franchise quarterback next year. tank out this year and figure out where this franchise goes. But the New England way doesn't feel like that. That is a very non-New England way. The same way the Spurs don't bottom out, the Patriots will never throw a season. As long as Bill Belichick is wearing a hoodie on the sideline, they're never going to do that. So the questions around Brady have been answered. But the questions around Foxborough, the questions around New England, I think are still simmering. Let's move on to another older quarterback changing cities. The Chargers, again, similar to the Patriots, unceremoniously forced their quarterback out. They knew that the future with Phillip Rivers wasn't going to be one that hoists a Lombardi trophy. So they move on from Phillip Rivers, arguably one of the better quarterbacks that the franchise ever had. Phillip goes to Indianapolis, a team kind of like Denver in 2013 is just a quarterback away. The biggest competition in the division was the Houston Texans. The Texans move on from Hopkins. They've got a young quarterback, a bad offensive line, a beat-up defense. They don't feel like the team to beat in the AFC South. The Titans signed Ryan Tannehill, who had an incredible second half of the season. But is it magic in the bottle? Can they recreate that run that they had last year? How many more carries does Derrick Henry have? We know every running back has a certain amount of carries, but you don't have a timer on it. You don't know how many carries he's going to have before his body breaks down. The Titans have a good defense, but we don't know what they're going to look like next year. Is Mike Vrabel going to be found out the same way that Sean McVay was? Titans have a lot of questions around them as well, but the Colts have felt like the team that was a quarterback away from making a real playoff push to make a real big impact in the AFC, and now I think they have their guy. Rivers, to me, has at least a season or two left in him of elite play. If he can come out and be as good or better than his contemporary in the AFC, Ben Roethlisberger, I think that he could be the type of quarterback who could lead the Colts to at least an AFC championship appearance. That's how good I think this Colts team could be. You look at the New England Patriots, they're not going to have a home seed bye. They're not going to get the number one seed. So you think about teams like the Chiefs and the Ravens. Those, to me, feel like the preemptive favorites to get those two first-round byes. The Colts could be a team that plays a wild card game, gets a little steam rolling. I could see them going into either Baltimore or Kansas City and catching either one of those teams on a good week. No games have been played yet, and I'm already saying that Phillip Rivers feels like the right pick for the Colts going forward. Let's move on to another old player. It feels like this is the old boys club, and kind of the same way that we talked about Brady. How if you're a retiree and you're moving your parents into a retirement community in Florida, Florida feels like the best spot. But if you are a retired couple living in the Pacific Northwest, it feels like the city to move to would be Las Vegas. You're staying on the West Coast, you're staying in your home, staying in your family, and that's exactly what Jason Witten did. He went from being a Ring of Honor recipient in Dallas to going to the Monday Night Football booth and fumbling that, to going back to Dallas and being a guy who could pick up 2.5 yards per reception, to now moving on to John Gruden and those boys in Las Vegas. The inaugural season of the Las Vegas Raiders, their tight end potentially could be Jason Witten. That's a terrible move. Jason Witten has not been a good tight end, a legitimately good tight end, in the past 5 years. You can go look at the numbers. They force-fed him the ball to get his numbers up. He's a Hall of Fame tight end, but another one of those guys that should have retired early, could have hung the cleats up early, and now we're going to watch the demise of Jason Witten. It's not going to be pretty. I think the Raiders deserve to be a team that has a microscope on them this year. They're the first team to play in Las Vegas. I think it's going to be a very interesting dynamic between the city and the team. The Raiders feel like the Las Vegas team. Feels like the perfect branding fit. But Gruden has a lot of pressure on him. And signing Jason Witten, another one of those guys that has a broken reception to the quarterback, Derek Carr, who feels like he's on his way out, it's going to be interesting. Moving on to another quarterback playing for the Raiders is Marcus Mariota, who I wasn't in love with. I thought that his elbow problems were a bigger issue than people let on, and now he is the second Heisman-winning quarterback to be playing backup. You look at RG3 in Baltimore. They had a couple cute sets with him this year, playing with Lamar and Mark Ingram in the Heisman set. I would like to see Mariota play the preseason, get some reps. The Raiders need to find out what they have in him, because maybe it was the Titans or the Titans system that wasn't making Mariota go. Maybe that was the problem. You've been in businesses, you've been in companies, you've been at work, and there's just not a connection with the place you're working. Now, most of us that work a 9 to 5, we got to grit our teeth and continue to work there until we find a better opportunity. Well, Mariota might have found a better opportunity. Maybe the Raiders are the team that he can fit in with and really make work. I'd be very interested to see what Mariota does. Again, I'm not completely sold on what he has and what they have in him, but I would like to see it. I would like to see what they could turn him into. If not, it's a 1-year deal. You move on from him, and then Derek Carr is the next guy you're going to start moving on from. Let's talk about Teddy Bridgewater. He gets a 3-year deal with the Carolina Panthers. Matt Rule, an incredible coach at Baylor. He's taking over the set over there. Teddy Bridgewater is getting paid starting quarterback money. I love that he did not sign with the Bears. I love that he is now in a different division than the Vikings, because I don't want to see him come and beat the Vikings in a playoff game. I don't want to see him come and beat the Vikings 2 times a year. So that's the thing I'm most excited for, with him being a starting quarterback. But what does that do to Cam Newton? Newton didn't request a trade. The Panthers are moving on from him, according to all accounts. I would be very curious to see if he's not the quarterback that makes it work in Chicago. That if you send 2 second-round picks for him, or say a second and a fourth for him, that he couldn't be the team. They couldn't be the team that turns him back into Superman. Like we saw Dwight Howard back in LA, and how he reinvented his body, he reinvented his game, and he was able to be a real contributor to the Lakers before the season ended. Maybe this is a thing for Cam Newton. And again, you talk about all these free agency movements, and it really does feel like, oh, maybe this is the team that makes it work. Maybe this is the team that makes it work. Maybe this is a player that can make this team make sense. And Cam Newton getting traded to a team like the Panthers, getting traded to even a team like the Patriots, could reinvent what he does. Because let's be honest here. We never gave Ron Rivera, I don't think, the flack that he deserved for some of those play calls that were made in Carolina. That Cam Newton was turned into a running back by, not necessity, because he could throw the ball. He could spin the laces. He got turned into a running back because the Panthers were lazy and didn't want to draft a running back. Didn't want to work out a running back. Didn't want to scout a running back. So they said, hey, Cam, you're going to run the ball a couple times a game. More than a couple times a game. You're going to run the ball every third and short. So good luck. Hope you don't break down. And that's exactly what he did. He got banged up. He got injured. And his career was never the same. But you go to a team like New England, who's going to make it work for him. They made a 42-year-old Tom Brady work. So why couldn't they make a younger, more athletic quarterback work? And I've always said this, that Brady turned into a cerebral, turned into an intelligent, turned into an incredible play caller. But when he came into New England, he wasn't that. Like, let's not fool ourselves, guys. He wasn't a great quarterback day one when he stepped on the field. It took some time. You take a bunch of reps at anything, you're going to be better at it. Cam Newton doesn't need to be great with the playbook day one in New England. He doesn't need to be able to pick out every single defense in day one. He just needs to beat the Bills and beat the Jets and beat the Dolphins, win 10 to 11 games, make the playoffs, and that's all Patriots fans really want in year one from him. And then the Patriots also going to be looking for a quarterback on the side. They can be drafting a young quarterback. So Cam Newton is going to be an interesting case, I think. Is a very good case study for what a athletic quarterback, a run-first quarterback, a quarterback who got banged up early, what he can do later in his career. Let's talk about 2 wide receivers, then I'll wrap this podcast up for you. Amari Cooper gets a big deal from Dallas. Dallas franchise tags Dak Prescott. I don't love that at all. $100 million, 5 years for Cooper. People continue to tell me that Amari Cooper is a top 5, top 7 wide receiver. I've never seen it. Maybe I didn't watch enough Raiders games. Maybe the Cowboys had these incredible plays when I was in the bathroom. But let me tell you, I've not seen Cooper be a guy who's worth $100 million. I just haven't. I haven't seen Cooper be a guy that's going to change a playoff game. I haven't seen Cooper beat a defense over and over and over again. So to give him this amount of money and to say, oh, this is a top 5 wide receiver, he deserves it. When in my opinion, there's a lot to be desired from a pass catching standpoint, but also just from a staying on the field standpoint. It feels like a weird contract to give, especially when you consider that Dak Prescott's still not signed. That you franchise tag your quarterback, who everybody has said by all accounts is the quarterback of the future for the Dallas Cowboys. Look, America's team needs a captain, and they haven't had it since Romo retired, and I mean that sincerely. Dak Prescott, to me, isn't the quarterback that can lead the Cowboys to a Super Bowl. He just isn't. Now, if you want to tell me, well, Zimmel, he's a guy who is better than Wentz when he plays on the field, and his numbers are better than Jared Goff and all this. Look at the quarterbacks who have led their team to a Super Bowl. Look at the quarterbacks who have led their team to a Super Bowl. You're thinking of Jimmy Garoppolo, who's an average quarterback at best. Let's call him 12 to 15 on the all-time or the recent quarterbacks. Kyle Shanahan's an incredible play caller. Sean McVay gets Jared Goff to a Super Bowl. Incredible play caller. Patrick Mahomes, incredible athlete. Can spin the laces. Andy Reid, a genius. Doug Peterson gets Nick Foles to a Super Bowl. Good play calling. Tom Brady can spin the laces. Got Josh McDaniels. Got Bill Belichick. Makes sense. Matt Ryan. Again, Kyle Shanahan gets him to the Super Bowl. Matt McCarthy rode Aaron Rodgers' coattails. Aaron Rodgers got that Packers team to the Super Bowl. Not Mike McCarthy. And now you're going to give Mike McCarthy the reins when you have the best running back in the game in Ezekiel Elliott, and he said that he's going to throw the ball more. So you bring in a coach that's going to waste your running back talent, a guy that you fought with and got him signed last offseason. The Cowboys are a team without a rudder. Ownership, the GM, the Jones family, has failed Cowboys fans. I don't know any other way to tell you. They have. Have they made good draft picks recently? Sure. Has Dak Prescott been a really impressive 4th-round pick? Of course, but he's a 4th-round pick. And he's played like a 4th-round pick sometimes. And unlike guys like Lamar Jackson, who's 22 years old and had a bad playoff game, Dak Prescott's getting into those years where you're in year 5 and 6 of the Prescott experience. What are you going to give to me? What do you got to show me? Are you going to win a NFC? Like, the bar for the Cowboys for the longest time was 9 wins. Now it's, I think, 9.5, 10 wins. You need to win 10 games in Dallas. They didn't do it last year. Didn't make the playoffs last year. I think that the bar for the Cowboys, if you want to continue to call yourselves America's team, you got to be playing in Super Bowls. And the Cowboys haven't done that. All right, to end this podcast, I want to talk a little bit about Stephon Diggs, who's been a headache. He wins the game against the Saints 2 years ago, or I should say 3 years ago, the Minneapolis Miracle. He was on the receiving end of that. Incredible play. He will always and forever be tattooed on the heart of Vikings fans. You can't think about the Minnesota Vikings now without thinking about Case Keenum to Stephon Diggs. It's impossible. That said, he has been a little bit of a pain in my ass for the past 18 months. How do you go from being one of the most talented wide receivers in the game? How do you go from being one of the most humble guys in the game to requesting a trade? Requesting a trade only works if your team sucks. If your team's not good, if your team's missing the playoffs every year, if you're not getting the ball nearly enough, then yeah, I get it. Maybe it's Cousins. I'd buy that. Are there some overthrows? Sure. But every quarterback overthrows their wide receiver sometimes. No quarterback has never overthrown his wide receiver. Maybe it's jealousy from Thielen. Look, I'm not the person to call it a race thing or anything, but maybe you're mad that the best wide receiver in the league, on your team, I should say, is Adam Thielen, a white guy. But I think the Vikings were always going to pick the hometown kid, played at Minnesota State, over Diggs. I don't think there's any qualm about that. I don't think there's any question about that. I don't think there should be. That makes sense. It sells jerseys. It's a business. And Diggs wasn't better than Thielen. When they both were on the field, Thielen ran routes better. He caught the ball more. He got open more times than Diggs did. So Diggs now goes to Buffalo and is going to be with Josh Allen, who I like. Think he's a good quarterback. He overthrows his wide receivers. So it's going to be interesting. I'm very curious to see what Diggs does on the sidelines. Because there's a real world where you go from Randy Moss to Antonio Brown. Where you go from a guy who is asking for the ball a little bit more in Terrell Owens to a guy like Antonio Brown who's out of the league. Do I think Diggs is on that crazy train? No. I think that he is a prima donna wide receiver, like a lot of wide receivers are. I think he wants the spotlight on him a little bit more. If Buffalo misses the playoffs this year, which is a real possibility, then you're going to be on a team with Josh Allen, who's a run-first quarterback, who is a taller Trubisky, if we're going to be completely honest, and a defense that's going to win you some games. You might not need to win, might not deserve to win, but they're going to win you some games. Diggs' numbers are going to go down. He's going to get forgotten about. He's going to make a couple Pro Bowls. He's not going to be named on any all-pro teams until he gets with a team that has a good quarterback. Cousins was a heaven sent compared to Josh Allen throwing the ball. So that's going to do it for the podcast. I'm Andrew Zimmel. A lot more content coming your way. Check out the all-time decade list where we're talking about some of the best players from the past decade, the 2010s. This episode, we are talking a little bit more about some of the players between 50 something and 40 something, I think. That 54 and some 40 something. So check that out. That's a pretty good one. I'll talk to you guys again tomorrow. Again, stay safe, wash your hands, don't go in big crowds, and most of all, be careful, please. Thank you. All right, I'll talk to you tomorrow.